Coming up on show 535, some states are spending their Dieselgate money on diesel, an EV Escalade, and a new look to a plug-in Toyota. Those stories and many more coming up on today's podcast. Some would say, most importantly, it's your part of the show. It's your part of the week. Your answers to question of the week coming up a little bit later. Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. In fact, wherever you're listening in the world, welcome to EV News Daily. Final day of the week edition, Sunday, 21st of July. Good morning if you're listening to us to start your week on Monday morning's commutes. In fact, whenever you're listening to this podcast, good to have you listening, good to have you along, good to be part of the family as well. Thank you for letting me into your life and spending some time with EV News Daily. Thank you very much to myev.com for helping make this show. If you're in the USA, you can buy and sell and learn about EVs all in one place. myev.com. myev.com. You know, I bought a used car last year. Sadly not with myev.com because it's USA only. But last year, I bought a 22 kilowatt hour Renault Zoe, and we've absolutely loved every minute of having it. The only thing, though, I went on a 240-mile journey, well, I suppose 480 round trip, actually, go see my dad a little while ago, and what else did we do? Oh, we popped up to see the mother-in-law, my wife's mum, her birthday today, and that's about 120 miles. The only thing about the old short or the smaller battery Renault Zoe is it's not the charging and it's not the stopping to charge, because I don't mind taking a break and grabbing some food and a coffee. It's just when you want to do those long journeys, I am just starting to get the feeling maybe a bigger battery, maybe an EV with a bigger battery would make our life easy. Look, 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, my wife is using it to poodle around town and go to work, and that's about 15 miles a day. But there are some edge use cases, and I'm just starting to think, maybe we need a slightly bigger battery. So that's what's been on my mind lately. Leave that one with me. Who knows what I'll do with that, but we'll see. Hey, look, thank you very much to executive producer Pete GORTON. Well, Pete already supported the show, and he's one of the many people who have recently upped his support. New exec producer, thank you, Pete, who is at Gyro Gordini, and he rather enjoys driving his BMW i3 60 amp hour version. Right, into the news. As part of Volkswagen's punishment for getting caught cheating on emissions tests, Volkswagen made a $3 billion grant available for individual US states. Each different state got a different amount of money. The money is theoretically supposed to be used to reduce nitrogen oxide pollution from those areas in which the money is spent from diesel engines, but state governments have a pretty broad discretion as to how they spend their Dieselgate money in the US, says InsideEVs. While some states apparently hope to mitigate diesel pollution by just buying newer diesel engines. Missouri plans to spend over $3.5 million on diesel school buses, trucks and other vehicles. New Mexico is also investing in diesel and natural gas vehicles. Arizona has earmarked $27.8 million for diesel projects. And what do you think of that? On one hand, they should be spending every dime, if you ask me, on EV technology. On the other hand, if they want to clean up the air in those states, and EVs are simply not available. You know, we talk about how EV cars aren't really available without a long old waiting list. Well, what about if you're buying EV buses and EV trucks? What if they're not available when you need them? Could you argue that actually buying a newer, cleaner, I hate calling diesel clean because it's not, but a newer version of the vehicles you're replacing, I mean, technically you are improving air quality in those areas. So I see both sides of it. Obviously, ideologically, me, with my, blue sky thinking all that, I would love them to spend all of the money on pure EVs. EV school buses, EV dump trucks. But what do you think? Let me know your thoughts. Is that an overreaction? Should we simply be aiming for a little bit better, newer diesel? You can email me anytime, by the way, hello@evnewsdaily.com. Volvo, or as the adverts in this country on TV say, Volvo. So maybe that's how the Swedish would like me to say Volvo. And Samsung SDI, the battery maker, have entered into what they call a strategic alliance. They're going to develop battery packs for Volvo Group's electric vehicles. Sorry, I've just been watching too many Volvo adverts with the cute Swedish voiceover lady going, Volvo. Working together with Samsung SDI, Volvo Group aims to accelerate the speed of development and strengthen the long-term capabilities and assets within what they call electromobility. You and I just call them electric cars and trucks. To the benefit of customers in things like truck segments and different markets, well, the alliance is going to cover joint development of battery packs specifically for Volvo Group's truck applications. Well, Samsung SDI is going to provide the cells and the modules to meet the demand for Volvo's electric trucks. This is great news and a great partnership. And Volvo do make some cracking trucks, by the way. Well, the intention is that Volvo Group is going to utilize Samsung's battery pack technology for assembly in the manufacturing operations. More Volvo trucks coming our way thanks to a great partnership. Well, Nissan has begun selling the Nissan Leaf in Latin America's 4 biggest markets. And who knew it wasn't available until now? We're talking Argentina, Brazil, Chile, and Colombia. I would presume, I'm not an expert on those markets, I would have always presumed that if you want to buy a Nissan Leaf, you could have done, but not. It turns out until today. Well, the expansion into Latin America builds on Nissan's position. They say they are the global pioneer in electric mobility, with more than 400,000 Nissan Leafs sold worldwide since the first one in 2010. A pre-sale stage for the Leaf, the new Leaf, began in Latin America at the end of 2018, and here we are almost in August, and those cars are finally going on sale now. The Nissan Leaf stat, which the press releases always like to wheel out that they are the world's number one car, the Nissan Leaf, sold over 400,000 vehicles. I should add, by the way, that the Tesla Model 3 is catching up very quickly. In fact, VIN numbers, and by no means can you count VINs as counting cars made. There is a correlation, and people will argue according to how close that correlation is, but Tesla just registered a couple of days ago VIN number 474,864 for the Model 3. In fact, if you look at the most recent Tesla VIN numbers, so many of them have been for international markets. I can't tell whether that's going to be Europe or China. It just comes up as an international figure. However, the VIN numbers are up to 474. Maybe when we get the latest Tesla news, we'll find out exactly what the worldwide cumulative number is up to. Would that number be online somewhere? I mean, we know how many they made till the end of Q1. We know how many they've been making roughly per week. Hey, look, we're going to get the investor call very soon, and I'm sure then we'll get our cumulative number. Moving on to Cadillac, and according to the Cadillac Society, the upcoming 5th generation of Cadillac Escalade will be offered with 3 powertrain options. And you guessed it, one of those is going to be all electric. Says InsideEVs.com, well, the electric version's not going to be available right away from the start of 2021, but it will come at some point later on. The most important hint from unofficial sources is that the expected range of the Cadillac Escalade EV is going to be upwards of 400 miles. That's over 644 kilometres, which, when taking into consideration the size and weight of the Escalade, suggests a pretty beefy battery pack. The Escalade is not a small vehicle, but it's a big enough vehicle that you can squeeze plenty of batteries in there. Well, currently the only SUV on the market in the US is, of course, the Tesla Model X, offering 325 miles or 523 kilometers of range. That does come with a 100 kilowatt-hour battery pack. You can argue that you can also buy the Audi e-tron, the Jaguar I-Pace, the Mercedes EQC. If not now, then soon. You can put them in the SUV category if you'd like as well. By the time the Cadillac Escalade EV is going to be ready, well, Tesla is going to be improving their battery technology. They'll definitely be over 400 miles, I would have thought, at least, even for a 100 kilowatt-hour battery pack. And they're definitely going to be... We know at some point they have to be moving from the old chemistry to the new chemistry. It's what we call the 18650 cells to the 2170 cells, or even the 21700 cells. I say it's what we call them that, because that's their name. It's not like my nickname is like, oh, the good old 18650s. They are the laptop batteries, like the big AA batteries that Teslas are built on, unlike the pouch cells that many other EVs are built with. The other contender in the luxury long-range big SUV market, of course, will be the Rivian, the R1S, and that's going to be on the market Who knows? Right, moving on to this country, and Royal Mail are going to be adding 190 electric vans to their existing electric van fleet. There's got 100 in service already and 190 are being added. Notable about the fleet is they're all going to be painted green. Now, the Royal Mail, very famously red, with the red post boxes, the red post vans as well. These ones, though, are taking a break from normal, and they're going to be green, says electrive.com. The new fleet's going to be made up of a mix of Mercedes-Benz eVitos and Peugeot partner vans. And the move will also approximately triple their electric fleet. Charging for the new vehicles is going to be done overnight, between 6 and 8 hours. The range of those vehicles between 93 and 106 miles. Final story today before we get on to question of the week, by the way. And Toyota is the company that, if you watch the TV advertising campaigns in this country, their strapline is, "We choose not to plug in." Which is kind of awkward because no one told the ad agency who came up with that and the Toyota execs who signed it off, guys, you do make a car that you have to plug in. Of course, my tongue is in cheek. I'm sure the executives at Toyota know they have a car that they have to plug in. I'm sure they do. That you have to plug in. And it's called the Prius Prime plug-in hybrid, and it's been revised for the 2019 model year, adding new gear and retaining the best of the functions that were already available. Says Car Scoops today, the biggest news is the addition of a rear seat. It's going to go from a 4 to a 5-seater. I didn't know it was a 4-seater, but it's now going to be a 5-seater on the rear bench. Toyota claims the bench offers the same levels of comfort as before. Also new for the new model year, a new Galaxy Black exterior metallic colour, 17-inch alloy wheels. The plug-in Toyota Prius achieves about 1.3 litres per 100 kilometres. That's about 180.9 miles per gallon US, and emits 28 grams of CO2 per kilometre. Electric range up to 28 miles. That's 45 kilometres of pure electric range in real life conditions, and in pure battery mode you can now do 84 miles an hour. That's 135 kilometres an hour. We'd love to see Toyota put some of that. And actually the Toyota Prius Prime, while I'm on this subject, by the way, sorry for the sidebar, is a handy bit of technology. It's got a heat pump as well, which not even some very nice EVs have a heat pump. It's got battery conditioning, so it looks after its little teeny weeny battery. Not the biggest battery in the world, I know, but the little tiddler that it's got, it looks after it. If only they would apply some of those skills to making full EVs. Anyway, let's move on to question of the week. And if you want to take part in our question of the week, email me anytime your answer, not to this question, by the way, but to any question that we set. And anytime during the week is fine, and then I read them out on Sundays. This week, we were talking about whether individual car makers should have their own charging networks, of course, the most famous being Tesla's supercharging network, or whether for the benefit of all EVs, for the good of the development, if you were, whether all charging networks should be open to all EVs. There are three main plugs, really, outside of China, that uses the GBT plug. There are three main plugs in the world, outside of Tesla's proprietary connector as well, I should add. And that is CHAdeMO, it's the CCS combo plug, and it's the Type 2 plug for AC charging. Should all chargers be legislated by law to have all plugs on? Or should charging makers put on whatever plug they want? Should different car makers be able to have their own charging networks? Well, thank you very much for all of your answers this week. I must say, actually, and I must add, I think that the answers to the question this week have been the longest, because some of the questions I ask you can be a yes or a no, and people write a few words. Many people this week wrote essays, and for that I thank you, and I've read every single one, and I've digested. I have had to edit some of these down, by the way, and even so, what are we at? 14 minutes now. This is going to be a while, but I think it's worth listening to, because everyone has a very valid point, and I would like to get through as many as I can. We'll start with Don. And Don Wood on Facebook, he said that since Tesla is investing a lot of capital to create their vast charging network in the US as one of many features offered to Tesla owners, it's important and valuable as a feature and as part of owning a Tesla and paying a premium price for Teslas. If open to other types of EV, I would expect that they should charge a premium additional tax for non-Teslas to discourage them being used by non-Tesla vehicles. In an emergency, others could use it, knowing they're paying way more than they really want to, but it's an emergency. Otherwise, they'd be charging at other types of charging stations. Most current gas stations should be installing generic charging outlets and be called the energy station, dropping the word gas from the name over time. These could then service all types of EVs, Teslas, non-Teslas, adapters provided at those stations if you forget yours. Hello to Rob Crawford. Rob Crawford says when Tesla came out with the Model S, there were no chargers of any kind. A year later, Elon was building chargers everywhere, from the USA to Europe, Canada, and China. Elon knew he had to have as many charging stations as possible, not really knowing what the response to the S would even be. Besides, he was covering his own ass. And then the Model S started to roll out. Nearly half of those chargers were in place, with many more on the way. And still to this day, newer and better charging is going up. Yes, all charging stations should be open to all models. There are cars like Byton coming to Europe and the States very soon, and there's no word if they're going to have their own charging network. So definitely, yes, all stations should have nozzles for all makes, brands of EVs. It makes reasonable sense to do so. Hello to Duncan Armour. When the charger network was appalling and inadequate, Tesla saw the need for good charging infrastructure and provided superb infrastructure at a point where realistically it couldn't afford to do so. Tesla's courageous and calculated risk-taking and use of hard-won debt should not be piggybacked by all those legacy car companies that saw the same initial problem but chose to do nothing about it. Hello to Doug Vowles. Manufacturers are free to do what they want with their investments, but I'd hope that this is the point in the process of getting wide public buy-in of EVs, that they would put their energies and charging assets available to everyone, preferably through an industry-wide program using the same standards. How about they donate $25 or even more for every EV they sell to something like Electrify America? Walled gardens bring up another option. Rather by brand, just put up a paywall, similar to VIP lounges at airports. Pay an extra fee when charging for access to air conditioning, showers, complimentary soft drinks. Freebie points and tickets could be given to customers when they go back to the lonely dealers once a year to have their tyres rotated, their wipers replaced, and perhaps a battery health checkup. Hello to Jack Oakley. Jack says, government financial support will only go so far. If there's a business opportunity for charging stations opened to the public or private charging clubs or private manufacturer charging spots, I welcome the charger expansion worldwide. I'd be happy to be part of the expanding community and would possibly base a purchase on charging stations available only to my vehicle. I have a major thorn in my side, says Jack, about Tesla's current model. I do not agree that government funds should be used to promote private charging as with Tesla. Now, with my i3, says Jack, I can't use a Tesla charger, but I'm frequently iced by Tesla's elite blocking. Not charging, just blocking in other EV spaces. Tesla owners should not be entitled to any public funds whilst their charging stations remain private. They're welcome to their private stations, but they should not be funded by any tax dollars and not be allowed to use those charging stations that are cropping up that are not on the Tesla network. Interesting thought, Jack. So Jack is saying yes to walled gardens, yes to people being part of a club, yes to people, if you have an Apple phone, you can only download Apple apps, but also saying Tesla should be banned from using any other charger because they've got their own one. Interesting, especially if the other chargers have been set up with public funds. Sasha says, I heard this question a lot, and while it's tempting to compare charging networks and gas stations, private networks are in fact investments made by a manufacturer and ultimately paid for by their investors and customers. In the case of Tesla, the network was built because other manufacturers weren't participating in the EV market. Some, like GM, actively worked to undermine the EV market. Check out the EV1. Yeah, all of those got crushed or squished a little bit and then stacked in big piles. And now, and GM and the oil industry have actively worked to roll back the Californian regulation on EVs. Have they? I didn't know. I will look that up. I wasn't aware that GM had been involved in any kind of campaigning in terms of either way on the California regulations. Well, causing charger congestion for people that paid for the network in exchange for a tiny profit would be a bit of a problem. Awesome question of the week. I'm glad you raised it. It's a frequent criticism of Tesla. I think they deserve credit for having the fortitude to create their own network where nobody else was willing to take EVs seriously. Moving on to Barry next, and Barry Wolf emailed me this comment. Fine with me. If I had a fossil gobbler, the by requirement of the manufacturer only gobbled super special fossils. It had a very special fossil gobbling inlet, if you like, requiring me to visit special fueling stations, and I willingly purchased the car. I would visit the special fossil gobbling station. It would be nice, of course, if the manufacturer made an adapter to use with the other fossil stations too, but with the caveat that without super special fossils, it wouldn't be possible to refill the car as quickly. All right, back to EVs, he says. I think it's okay, since Tesla pays for the network and manages it, and Tesla owners do pay a premium for this network. I drive a cheap VW e-Golf, he says, so I don't expect such treatment by VW or anyone else. Moving on to Ray Hodgka. In answer to your question of the week, I think all networks should be open to all. I know they have invested heavily, so I have no issues with them charging a reasonable rate, which gives them a sensible profit. In Tesla's case, I don't understand, says Ray, why they don't do that, given they have rarely made a profit. Also, I've watched a number of Tesla owner videos on YouTube, and I've yet to see them charging on a fully in-use bank of superchargers, so why not open up the system? I think it would only need a firmware update to the charger to allow it to detect whether it's a Tesla or another make. Thanks for the podcast. I'm a new owner of a Hyundai Ioniq EV, and Ray says, I'm loving it. Ray, by the way, if you haven't ever seen videos online of full Tesla supercharging stations, check out Bjorn Nyland, or Tesla Bjorn. He's a Norwegian, and in Norway, the home of the EV, where there's tons, he'll often... In fact, there's a recent video where he is it the 1,000-kilometre challenge? Or it's a recent one, or either that or his towing challenge, where he is at a supercharging station in Norway, and there's a big queue. There's queues of cars waiting to charge, and he talks about how often the superchargers are absolutely full. David Allen's next, and David says it bears mentioning that Tesla took the initial step of addressing the chicken or egg problem by building its own charging network at considerable expense, but later they were willing to license their tech patents or even offer them for free, and offered other car makers access to their network if they were willing to help pay for its expansion and maintenance. Everybody said pass and chose to let third-party companies build out the network, except Nissan, who did make CHAdeMO available at some of their dealerships. The ability for cars with different plug designs to use an incompatible plug is a solvable engineering problem, but adds the burden and expense of drivers having to carry multiple adapters. Whether this will happen becomes an economic, customer service and standards problem. The various companies can work out the economics and customer service issue, but the governments will have to step in and establish interoperability. Matthew Cooper is next, and he sent me a long old email, but he also sent me a TLDR version. Let people do business freely. We have to remember that OEMs do not have to go above and beyond and create a charging network. There are dedicated businesses for that purpose. If they do create a network, I think they should be allowed to wall it off, not to block their own car owners from charging. Tom Raftery says there's absolutely no reason to have walled gardens because everybody would lose. Consumers have fewer places they can charge from. Charging companies make less money by making it harder for people to give them money. And think of it this way, back in the days when we were putting dino juice in our cars, we could buy fossil fuels at any service station. There's no reason for EVs to be any different in this respect, at least. Andrew Jacobs is next. He says, he got two more, by the way. And Andrew says, I will be very surprised that anyone says there should be walled gardens. A major standard should, and hopefully will, emerge that all charger manufacturers will use. While the Tesla model is very convenient for the Tesla owners, and I can understand why Tesla drivers would be keen for the Tesla chargers to be exclusive to them, it doesn't help the adoption of EVs if there are lots of different charging plugs and standards. Imagine how good it would be if all EVs could access the Tesla network. After all, Teslas can connect to other networks. Anyone wanting to develop a Tesla supercharger to CHAdeMO adapter for his Nissan Leaf, he says, he'd be happy to pay for the privilege. Me too. Me too, Andrew. I absolutely would. If I could buy an adapter or subscribe to an adapter, if Tesla wanted that as ongoing monthly revenue, think of it as charging as a service. And so if Tesla said, you can either buy an adapter for your Renault Zoe that would be £2,000 for the adapter, or it's $80 a month ongoing, I'd be like, yeah, I'll subscribe to that and then pay for the electricity as well, because whenever I turn up in this country, at least, and the UK is behind in terms of other countries with Teslas, Norway or California, for instance, I've never seen more than 3 or 4 cars. In fact, when I borrowed a Tesla Model S and I was taking it back on the Monday morning, and I popped into a supercharging station just so that I got back to return the car with a fullish, as full as it could be, battery. And there was 3 or 4 cars at the station, and I got out of the car, and another Tesla owner just sort of talked across his bonnet and went, "Phew, busy this morning, isn't it?" And there was about 14 stalls. This was at somewhere called Fleet Services. And you think, and I nodded and went, yeah. And I thought to myself, no, there's 4 cars here. And it's not even half full. But obviously for him, if he uses that station regularly, 4 cars to his mind was like, poof, blimey, rush hour. Moving on, final comment, John Lacey. I think that all charging networks should be opened up to everyone, including the Tesla network. And I say that as a Tesla owner, he says. John says, in the ethos of helping the rapid global growth of sustainable transport, however, non-Teslas should pay a higher price when using superchargers. The reason being that when you buy a Tesla, you're partly funding the build-out costs of the superchargers. And so it wouldn't be fair on Tesla owners if others simply got to use the network without chipping in more. I would expect then Tesla to use additional funds to build even more superchargers, thus benefiting Tesla owners with a greater number of chargers across the network. The only issue I can see, he says, is that there's a majority of non-Teslas that have slower charging speeds, and it would clog up the chargers. So perhaps a 30-minute max time would be imposed on a busy period. Thank you, John. Oh, and thank you for your support as well, John. It's much appreciated. And thank you to everyone who commented this week. It was a good question. I mean, I don't mean to in any way sound like, hey, well done us, but it was a good question, wasn't it? I got a good response. Let's set a brand new question. That didn't come out very humbly, did it? Let's set a brand new question. Get your answers in before next Sunday's show. What's the most constructive way to stop a charger being iced? Because I've seen it increasingly recently, and it ebbs and flows, and I go through periods where I see people are being very good, and then it goes through periods like now. And I've seen a lot of charging bays with fossil gobblers parked in them. And so what's the most constructive way to stop that happening? So what I don't want to hear is, I don't want you to email me and be like, tow the car away and crush it. Because that's not going to happen, is it? Like, if you park in a charging bay, if you park in a disabled spot, or you park in a parent and child spot, then you don't get your car towed away and crushed within 5 minutes. So I know that the people will want to email me that. Please don't. That's why the question is, what's the most constructive way? It's interesting, actually, the psychology of things. I was working last week in London, and there was a movie premiere. It wasn't like a big fancy red carpet premiere with, Hollywood A-listers. But for the people that were in the movie, they were very famous, and there were lots of well-known people at it. Anyway, so I was working at that event, and I was creating some podcasts and I was helping generally the video team. They were short of a few pairs of hands. So I drove into London, and I drove into Mayfair, and the road that the cinema was in was one road into what is called the congestion zone. And I didn't realise. And so as I drove into it, I drove through the cameras and thought, oh, man. Right, so it was 2:00 in the afternoon, and I wasn't driving my personal EV. And so I drove into the congestion zone, which was £12.50 to pay in central London. I thought I must do that. It was a late night. It was a very late night, actually, editing the audio. I got a couple of hours sleep, and then the next morning I was up first thing to drive to Silverstone, where I was also helping to make another podcast live on stage with a Formula One driver, and it was very busy. That finished again about 2 o'clock in the morning by the time I'd made the show and posted it online. And so then by Friday, I came to pay my congestions charge from Wednesday, and it's too late. You have to pay the congestion charge immediately by going into London. They give you a small grace period. So when I called them and said, it's Friday, I think I'm too late, what happens? And she said, you've been fined. And the fine is £80. So I've paid £80 to drive into London for work. What should have cost me £12.50. I'm £80 out of pocket. But will I ever do that again? Nah. I've learned my lesson, right? I know that if I ever have to drive into central London again, one, drive an EV, or two, if I'm taking a car with work, pay the bill on time. So that's the psychology of it, right? So I'm out of pocket. No, I don't really want to be out of pocket, but will I do it again? Absolutely not. So I'm looking for those kind of, I know that that's a penalty that I was given, but those kind of suggestions of possible ways that we can stop people parking in charging spots if they haven't got an EV, or if they have got an EV and are simply not charging. Let me know your thoughts. You can email me hello@evnewsdaily.com or pop me a message on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you very much to 237 patrons of the podcast. Thanks to you, I get to make this show every single day. If you want to check out what it's all about, patreon.com/evnewsdaily. It's patreon.com. It's a way of individuals, if you feel compelled to, or just curious to, have a look online at my Patreon page. By no means do you have to. It's entirely optional. And some people become exec producers of the show for $10 a month, and you will get this show and you get your name in the show notes, and I'm going to give you a credit in a minute if you do. You can support more. Maybe if you're a company and you would like me to be mentioning your company name, you're very welcome to do that. Thank you very much to Phil Roberts of Electric Future, our premium partner and many-time guest of this show. I think it's, are we up to 3 now? Not bad. He's at the top of the leaderboard. Brad Crosby, who I've never featured on the show, but I would love to, and Avid Technology, and Ryan and the team at Avid. And thank you very much to the partners of the show, David Allen, who is an active participant and emailing me and feeding back as well. I love it. OEM Audio of New Zealand and evpower.co.nz. Paul O'Connor, a partner of the show. Blake Boland at EV Life Ireland. And of course, Gerard and the team at tryev.com. TryEV, getting you into EVs here in the UK. And all of the exec producers of the show. I'm going to give you a mention. Someone mentioned to me recently, there's too many names on the list now. Can you please not mention all their names? Look, the podcast is basically done. You can just hit stop now. But I'd love you to carry on and listen, especially if your name's in here. And thank you, Alan Robson, Alan Shed, Alex Banahini, Alexander Frank, Anders Hove, Harold Giesch-Galsveen, Ashley Hill, Bjard Fuchstak, Barry Peniston, Bob Muir from gingercomputers.com in Dundee, Borislav Borisov, Brent Kingsford, Brian Thompson, Brian Weatherall, Cesar Trujillo, Charles Hall, Chris Hopkins, Craig Coles, Craig Rogers, Damien Davis, Dan Fairs, Darren Bird and Darren Sant from the Yorkshire EV Club, Dave Jewson, David Barkman, David Finch, David Partington, David Prescott, Dirk Rutsatz and Don McAllister. Out of his Kona and into his Model 3 from screencastsonline.com. Enrico Stefanchillo, Frederick Rovic, Free Jewel, aka James, George Clargo, Ian Griffiths, Jack Oakley, James Storr, Jason Fan, Jeff Irbies, Jeff Helinski, sorry, Jeff. Jerry Allison, Jill Smith, John Bailey, John Lacey from Click Clack Video, NZ. John, who is Beardy McVeerdface from Kent EVs. John Nodell, Juan Gonzalez, Ken Morris, Kevin Mason, Carl Mayen, Lars Daliger, Lawrence D. Allen, Leo Leisure Grill, Louis Hopkin, Luke Cully, Marcel Lohman and Marcel Ward. Marlin Shell, Martin Crofts, Matt Piccioni, Matthew Ellis, Matthew Greby, Maz Shah, Mia Oppelstrop, Matthew Pastroni, Michael Pastroni, sorry Michael, Michael Cuffin, Mike Rogers, Mike Winter, Nathan Gore-Brown, Neil E. Roberts from Sussex EVs, Ohad Aston, Paul Ridings, Paul Seeger-Smith, Paul Stevenson, Perry Simpkins, Pete Glass, Pete Gordon, Peter and D. Roberts from Oxfordshire EVs, Phil Mouchet, Pontus Klinbad, Rajiv Narayan, Ralph Jensen, Renee Schneider, Rob Cooling from appledriving.co.uk, Rob Hermans, Robin Tanner, Rupert Mitchell, Sarah McCann, Sari Kangasocha, Seiki Payne, Steve John, Stuart Hanna, The Limousine Line in Sydney, The Plug Seeker, and his EV YouTube channel, Tim Gutteridge, Walter McVeigh, and Zach Hurst. just that cursed, actually. I'm getting giddy now because it's very late. You can listen to all 534 previous episodes of this show for free wherever you get podcasts from. The blog is online at evnewsdaily.com. If you subscribe, you haven't got to think about downloading it every day. If you subscribe, you get it free. You get it first, and you get it automatically. And if you can leave a little review, take 2 minutes to do that. It means the world to me. Please do share this podcast with someone who might get some value out of it. If you want to say hi on the socials, you can search EV News Daily. Have a wonderful day. Catch you for a brand new week tomorrow. And remember, there is no such thing as a self-charging hybrid.